Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Dynasty After Dark. I'm your host, Calvin Timms. Find me over on Twitter at TDC_Calvin. Find my co-host, Dale, who's also with us on the pod on Twitter at Dynasty_Dale. We're excited to have you guys back. It is finally here. Combine week is almost over now. Running backs are going right now. They're doing the last drills right now. And there was a lot to talk about from the Combine. How's it going, Dale?
Hey, it is going very good, and it was a jam-packed weekend, in Indy, I'm sure, and very excited to talk about
Yeah. Yep. It is good. The's a lot, your boy CJ Stroud put on a pretty good show on the
Yes, he did.
field. He didn't do much of the athletic testing, but yeah, there's another guy we're going to have to talk about as well. So before we jump into it, wherever you're listening to the podcast, if you can, like, comment, and subscribe to the podcast. It just helps out with YouTube and the algorithm, and I don't know how that crap works. I'm not gonna lie to you. I'm not a computer guy in that sense. I know computers somewhat, but not that well. So all I know is if you guys do that, it'll help us. And if you tell one friend about the podcast, it'll also help us that way to grow the listening base. So whatever you guys can do to help us out there would be truly appreciated. So that said, there's a lot to break down with the Combine. Dale, are you ready?
I can't wait.
All right, so we're going to go through this, and I've ordered it in a specific way. So if you go back and you listen to our original rookie quarterback episode, I broke it out into tiers, how I rank these guys. So I'm going to go along these guys in the same tiers, and we're just going to adjust a little bit for some of the guys that are no longer there or some of the guys that have moved up and down tiers for me. Then at the end of this, we're going to recap it with the final tiers post-combine, and then we'll have one final tier breakdown after the draft, which will determine the final tier rankings for these guys. And Dale's going to give you his tier rankings as well at the end, because the rookie one that we did so far was just my rankings, and I want to get Dale a chance to break down his tiers on all these guys, because I know he disagrees with me on my Hendon Hooker ranking, but I'll forgive him because Hendon Hooker is going to prove him wrong sooner or later, right? So, all right, Dale. So you ready to jump into the quarterbacks here?
Absolutely.
All right, so the number one guy we're going to talk about is going to be CJ Stroud. And we just mentioned him a little bit. He was my pre-combine quarterback number one. I did the whole breakdown on CJ Stroud. Ironically, that same night that we recorded the podcast, he goes out and just absolutely torches Georgia and shows everything that I was saying was correct. And the guy he's the best passer in this combine. Like, he's just the best passer in 100%. This class. He's not, I will say, the Bryce Young at 101, Bryce Young is probably the smartest, the quickest, like the most intelligent on the field of all the quarterbacks. But if he didn't have the physical limitations, he would definitely be my 101 as well. CJ Stroud's not as quick as Bryce Young mentally, but dang, he's the best looking passer out there by a mile. And CJ Stroud, if you went out there and looked, he's not doing any of the testing at this combine. He's going to do it all at Ohio State's Pro Day. So, we don't have too many numbers here. We did get the official height and weight in 1 pound less than what Ohio State had him listed at. Good arm size, good hand size. So nothing really of note there. CJ Stroud was thrown on the field. He was in the same group as Anthony Richardson, which those two going back and forth, and we're going to talk about Anthony Richardson in just 1 minute. It was a clinic, man. They were just destroying. They look so good on the field. And I know it's the combine, it's against air, get rid of all the excuses for that stuff, right? But the effortlessness that CJ Stroud had when he was on the field just reinforces number one overall to me. And I just really like the upside with CJ Stroud. I think that he's probably less raw than Anthony Richardson, who we're going to get into here shortly, but he's probably not as good of an athlete. We'll be real there, but he's very, very good, and I think he's the best passer in this class, good enough to be my quarterback number one in this year's draft class.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree with that. CJ Stroud, for the past 2 years that he started at Ohio State, has been effortless in passing. I think the thing that a lot of people knocked him on was his athleticism, trying to get out of the pocket, because it's because he never really had to do that, and it's because the offensive line was so good. He had so good his wide receivers were,
Always
out of
open.
this world. Yeah, always open. So like he never had to do that.
Right.
So I think with him doing some of the drills and showing that pinpoint accuracy and precision, all of that together, it was a clinic.
Mm-hmm.
It was a beautiful thing to see. I do understand like what you said, like it is against air, but he was doing that anyways at Ohio State. Like it
Right.
wasn't anything new.
It was all
It,
against
it,
air at
it,
Ohio
it-
State too, right?
yeah, yeah,
So.
yeah, honestly. So it was the same. It was the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
So I honestly feel that he is the safest quarterback in this draft.
Yeah, I agree with you
So so
100%
it's
there.
100% the safest quarterback. So like if you want someone who's going to be day one starter, someone who's better than like a Jared Goff type who's able to read defenses, he's able to move around, has that pinpoint accuracy,
Mm-hmm.
he is it. He is it.
Yep.
100%.
Yeah, I think he's probably the most accurate of all these guys. Well, except maybe my Hendon Hooker later on, but we'll talk about him in a little bit too. But yeah, CJ Stroud, absolute stud. Still have him number one overall, and it goes a long way when you see guys who haven't been very high on CJ Stroud so far in all their mock drafts, like Dane Brugler
Hmm.
and Matt Miller and all these other big famous talent scouts for the NFL, right? And they come out and say he's the best one that we might have ever seen throw at a combine. That's
Hmm.
how good he was throwing the ball. So like I said, CJ Stroud, Dale put it perfectly, safest quarterback in this class, and I think he also has amazing upside as well from what we saw in that Georgia game. You just got to get him good talent around him, and he's going to be able to just absolutely cook. So, number one overall for me. Number two guy, and the only other guy in my tier one, is going to be Anthony Richardson, and this guy is the talk of the town right now. Anthony Richardson weighs in at 6'4", 244 pounds, massive hands, massive arms. We all knew he was going to be a physical freak of nature, but oh my goodness. 4.43 40-yard dash with a 10-yard split of 1.53, which is very, very quick just for,
Freaking ridiculous. Yeah.
we're getting running back numbers right now, and some of the running backs aren't even in that same 10-yard split. It's crazy. 40.5 vertical jump, 10'9" broad jump, and I'm pretty sure the vertical jump was a record for quarterbacks, and the broad jump he tied the best of all time, if I remember right. So
I believe for quarterbacks,
yes, for quarterbacks. That's not for every position, but just dude's a freak of nature athlete,
athletic
right?
freak. Yes. 100%.
Downside are, of course, we've talked about it. His production in Florida were not great. He was a 1-year starter. He was with Florida for 3 years, redshirt sophomore. So he's draft eligible this year, but, didn't really get the field before this year. Very, very inaccurate. Not the greatest passing completion percentage. Very, very raw talent. Things are not going well in Florida from college better than me, but I would say that generally things are not looking good for Florida the last couple of years coaching wise. There's a lot of players that are underutilized, overutilized. It's a very odd situation down there, right?
Yes.
So I don't want to completely put that on Anthony Richardson. He might not have been set up in a system that will let him shine and let him thrive. So Anthony Richardson, the reason why he's still going to be my number two guy and the last guy in my top tier of quarterbacks, the upside is Cam Newton, Lamar Jackson for fantasy football. Like he is those two guys put together. And, if he's not the best quarterback, that's fine for fantasy. It doesn't really matter. Unless you're a 6-point passing touchdown in like the one weird rule where it's all quarterback yards or 1 per 25 yards. If you're in those kind of leagues, okay, maybe Anthony Richardson should not be this high in your rankings, but for pretty much every other standard league, 1 for 10 for rushing yards for quarterbacks is just absolutely broken. And even in 6-point passing touchdowns, I think he'll be just fine. It does even that up a little bit there, but I think he's going to be a stud. And for fantasy football, give me the upside at the 102, 103. And that's all I'm really looking for that early is the upside with Anthony Richardson. Again, he's got a very choppy floor. He's a very risky prospect. But I think that what he's going to do with this combine is solidify himself as a top 10 draft quarterback. And with that kind of draft capital, they're going to build around him. They're going to try and make this guy succeed. So give me him all day at 2. What are your thoughts on him?
No, I 100% agree with that. It's like I was watching him through like the Twitter feeds, and people were just losing their minds over him and how much he is just this freak athlete. Which I think that's fantastic. That's all great, but like, can he throw a ball to a wide receiver? You
Yeah.
know,
Yep.
and throw it accurately. So that is my biggest holdup. It's same with you. I know I know the SEC has a lot of different competition compared to some of the other conferences, but for him, like he still didn't do as well as he really could have.
Right.
I mean, he definitely doesn't have the touch of a Stroud, anything like that. But like the difference between him and some of the other, lesser running quarterbacks that we see is a dude can make plays anywhere, everywhere, fast.
Yeah.
He is not afraid.
No. Yeah. And at
He's
244 running a 4.43 is just nuts, man.
terrifying. It's terrifying.
um
100%.
All right, so Anthony Richardson, my dynasty number 2 guy, still no real change. There's not a ton of change for me, but the one I did break down to Dale before the podcast started will shock you here in this tier number 2. I did move a guy up, so we're going to jump into my tier 2 here. I still have Hendon Hooker as my number 3 dynasty quarterback right now for this rookie class. When you look at it, I get the downsides with Hendon Hooker. Tennessee's a little bit of an easier offense. The funny thing is he gave that press conference and they asked him, well, why should we take you so high when your receivers were, they were wide open all the time? And he goes, it's not my fault they're wide open. What am I supposed to do? Not hit them when they're just completely blazing down the side of the field? So, it's not Hendon Hooker's fault. He wasn't able to test because of the ACL injury. That kind of really stinks. But everything out of Indy says that he met with a lot of different teams. He had very, very good interviews, gave good press conference interviews to all the media people and everything as well. And he's a very good player. Like, he just is. He's probably the most accurate. I do think he's more accurate than CJ Stroud. But again, his receivers, both of them have very wide open offenses, so it's hard to say which one is going to be the easier offense. But Hendon Hooker, most accurate guy, and he does have wheels as well. I do like the athletic talent. The only downside is he's a little bit older, right? He's a redshirt senior, but it doesn't really matter for a quarterback. Who cares? I see all these people on Twitter right now. They're saying, "Oh, you're going to invest in a 25-year-old quarterback?" You do realize Tom Brady just retired and he's 45. Aaron Rodgers is still playing and he's 40 this year. It does not matter.
Those guys, it does a little bit because those guys
are freaks of nature. I will say,
they are the outliers.
Yes, but Kirk Cousins is still playing at a high level and he's 35. Like, it doesn't matter. You can have 10 years of this guy, and if he's going to be a starter for 6, 7, 8 of them, who cares? That's the point, right? Like, 25 for a quarterback is different than 25 for a running back or a receiver. You have a lot longer before you're going to hit that age cliff. That's the one thing for these quarterbacks. I get it. It's not great. You'd prefer your quarterback to be 21, 22 years old. I understand that, but I'm just saying 25 is not a deal breaker for a rookie quarterback. Who cares?
Oh, and I hear that. I do like Hendon Hooker. He's moved up my rankings, in the beginning, like as of December 31st, I had him as my QB6, like behind some players that are completely off my list at this point.
Yeah, right.
I'll be very honest. I was more worried about him coming back from the ACL, kind of getting um, that clean bill of health,
Mm-hmm.
I guess you could say, and I think that's the one thing that he has going for him at this moment is that he is going to be healthy, come week one,
Mm-hmm.
um, and that he did interview really well. So
Yep.
I would not be shocked if he's like a late round one quarterback. I wouldn't be shocked,
I
but
would
I
not.
mean,
That's where I could see him going. I think
yeah,
there's going to be 4 in the top 10,
yes,
and then is there
yes,
going to be a
yes,
fifth? That's the question, right? And
right,
we'll
yeah.
get to the next couple guys here, but I think if anyone's going to be the fifth, it's going to be Hendon Hooker. That's the only thing.
Yes,
The other guys in
100%.
the other guys in the combine, this was supposed to be such a good quarterback class, and I feel like it
Oh,
disappeared so quick. These guys
quickly.
are good, but they're not deep whatsoever. There's no depth to the quarterbacks here. Other than, well, I mean, I guess if you count 5 guys deep, but after those
Right.
5, it gets real rough.
Yes, I 100% agree.
All right, so Hendon Hooker is going to still be in my tier 2 guys here. The guy that's going to move up here, and we're going to talk about him, and I'm intentionally talking about him before I get to the next guy, is going to be Will Levis. And Will Levis, I've been knocking him all offseason. 6'4", 229 pounds. I think that he makes a lot of stupid decisions. I don't think he's a very intelligent quarterback on the field, at least with Kentucky. Now, you can argue that it doesn't really matter. He has all the tools in the world, and you can fix that piece of it. I'm not entirely certain about that, but I'm willing to be proven wrong. The guy, if I talk about Anthony Richardson as having a massive ceiling for fantasy football, Will Levis also has a massive ceiling for fantasy football. I might not like him. I might not think he's very good. Dude does have a cannon. He was slinging that ball
He does.
at the
He does.
combine, and when you weigh in at 6'4", 229, you got a massive wingspan, and you do know he has some mobility. He didn't do the 40-yard dash. Maybe he'll do it at Kentucky's pro day. That's the one downside. Real quick rant here. Like, I saw someone come out today on Twitter and say that they need to start enforcing these guys to test at the combine.
No,
I agree with this, actually, because
I
here's the problem, right? All these guys, like Bryce Young, who we're going to talk about here in just a minute, even CJ Stroud, I'm not happy that he didn't do any athletic testing either, but a lot of these guys, they're trying to game the system, and it annoys me to no end whatsoever, because I'll save this rant. I'll save it for Bryce Young because we'll get to it there. Will Levis does have all the physical tools. Maybe he runs the 40-yard dash at his pro day. Hopefully he does, so we can kind of have a number there. I think that he's got pretty good wheels. I mean, he's probably like a 4.5 guy, to be honest with you. He's not blazing fast like upper 4.5s, like 4.58, 4.59, maybe even 4.6, but you saw some of these other guys that come out of nowhere from the quarterback position and just put on a blazing 40 time. So I think that Will Levis is going to show a little bit there. Very, very raw, though. I don't love like I said, I think he makes a lot of dumb decisions. And they don't have a lot of weapons in Kentucky. It's not a great system there for football. So you got to give him a little bit of fluff like I do other people. So that's why I'm moving him up from my tier 3 to my tier 2. Again, I think he has a lot of upside. Don't really love it, but I'm willing to take it more so than before. What are your thoughts on Will Levis?
Well, I would first like to say with the whole combine requirements, I think that can get really sticky with injuries and stuff like that.
That's the one downside. I get that piece, but
for instance, like I was watching the O lineman this morning, and then I saw a guy. He probably tore his hamstring.
Yeah,
on the 40-yard dash.
Yep.
And we're going to talk about a couple wide receivers in the coming days that got hurt and couldn't do these other activities because they're running a 40 time that, honestly, I don't feel the 40 time is a huge factor.
Here's the thing, though.
Personally, compared to other drills that
No. Here's the thing, though. I will say, this is the one thing that I would change, though. If you're going to do pro days, and, you got to make them official. Like, that's the thing. Pro days are done by the team scouts, right? Now, Bryce Young, for example, who I was saving this rant for Bryce Young. So he's going to go there, and he's going to not weigh or get measured at that. and he's going to do all the on-field and all the athletic testing and all that stuff. We're going to go back to the combine numbers and say, oh, that's his height and his weight. But then we're going to go to the pro day and we're going to say, oh, but this is all his athleticism on the field. And we're going to combine those like they're the same thing. Either you do all of it at once or you do none of it at once. That's the difference that they should make. Because guys like Bryce Young are going to abuse it completely. Jordan Addison, for example, I ran a 40 and then all of a sudden I threw out my back. It's like, I'm just not going to do anything else today and I'm done and I'll do the rest of it at my pro day. It's like, guys, what are we doing here? They're gaming the system, and I get it. All the support for them. They have that right to, right? But it annoys me as an engineer who likes numbers, right? Like, I like definitive information, and I don't like people being slimy about it. That's the only thing that annoys me about it, you know?
Yeah, and I do hear that, and I don't think there's any good way to fix that. Honestly,
there isn't,
not,
but
so
I think you either do all of it or none of it. That's the only way to really fix it. But all right, so I'll talk about Bryce Young in 1 minute. What are your thoughts on Will Levis?
Will Levis, my thoughts of him haven't changed. I know he has a cannon. You know, I know he has that physical tool, but the tape doesn't lie. He's not good. He's going to go in the first round. He's probably going to get drafted. I just have a feeling that he's going to be a Colt for whatever reason.
I don't know, man. They might go Stroud. That's who I'm kind of feeling.
I really hope they trade up. They about have to get one of those guys with how they threw.
Yeah.
So,
yep.
You know, I mean, Will Levis for me, don't want him. Don't want him near my team. I don't think he is that good personally. I think he's rated. I understand he has all of the physical tools we like, and we love to see all these things, but the dude's trash. He is utter trash. I mean, I'm not saying I could throw a ball better than he can. I definitely cannot, and you know, I'll be the first one to say that. But just because you can throw the ball that fast, hard, doesn't make you a good quarterback.
I agree, but I do think that he does have, for fantasy football, again, I'm with you 100%, but if we're going to give Anthony Richardson, who was also just as raw and not great for actual football, if we're going to give him a bunch of plaudits, right, and say, I'm willing to take him at 102, I feel like we're being we're just being haters if we're not willing to also do the same with Will Levis. And again, within reason, it's a tier down, so we're knocking him for that. But I agree with you. I don't think he's going to be the best NFL quarterback, but I mean, him versus Kenny Pickett, he's got better talents and skill set, athleticism than Kenny Pickett does. I'd rather have him than Kenny Pickett, to be honest with you. You know what I mean? So
that's very fair.
That's for fantasy football only. Upside, I think Will Levis does bring something to the table, but I do agree with you. I'm very nervous about him to lead my franchise. You know,
extremely. You know, I get it for fantasy, but I would much rather have the person that you're going to talk about next than Will Levis, because I feel can make plays where Will Levis can't.
All right, so we'll talk about him.
That's just me.
We'll transition. So the last guy I'm going to have in tier number 2 here is going to be Bryce Young. And Bryce Young did nothing at this. He did get weighed and measured, and this is what I'm talking about with a gaming the system. So comes in at 5'10", shorter than what he basically came in what we all knew he was going to come in at, right? We all knew he was short. Weight-wise, he came in at 204. No chance in hell that he's 204.
How did he do that?
Because he's been eating nonstop for like 2 months. Okay, so, and the reason why I know this, and the reason why it annoys me so much is because people from now until the end of time are going to go back and say, well, Bryce Young's 204. He's not, though. He's not. There's a famous UFC fighter. His name is Paddy Pimblett. Up-and-coming star, right? Guy fights at 145 pounds, I think, or 135, 145. I think it's 145, right? He's rising the ranks and everything. Guy walks around at 200 pounds in between fights. 200 pounds. So he cuts a ton, just an absolute ton of weight in between his for actual fight day. When he is not in shape And when he's in shape, he's like 6 foot tall. He's a massive dude. He is cut. He is absolutely jacked because he has to cut almost all the body fat off his entire body, right? Just to get down to the fighting weight. When he's not in shape, his cheeks he has like the biggest chipmunk cheeks in the world. When you look at Bryce Young, from all of his interviews that he did this week, he had the chubbiest cheeks. And I've seen this in myself. I've seen this in other people. When you're just not eating healthy, right? You're just eating to eat. You get it in your face first. Like, it's one of the first places that it just packs on is in your cheeks, right? And Bryce Young was so much chubbier in the face than he was if you go back and watch most of his like interviews from college when he was playing on the field at Alabama, dude, he's in good shape. He's a smaller guy, and he's in good shape. He's small, he's tiny, but he does really, really well. He's extremely intelligent, probably the best processor out of all of these quarterbacks by a mile. But he's tiny, right? And it works at Alabama because it's college. But he's very, very lean. And when you look at him at the combine, and he's got chubby cheeks, all of a sudden he weighs 204, he probably put on 20, 25 pounds of fat, not even like good weight, just to get up there to weigh in. Now, this is going to go on his record forever. Oh, he's 204. He's the same size as Kyler. Oh, he's 204. I put out that picture on Twitter. There's no way he's the same size as Kyler. No way. He's not even within 10 pounds of Kyler. It's not close. So that's what I'm talking about that annoys me with these combines, because now he's going to go back to Alabama. He's going to cut all this weight off because he's just been bulking. He's going to go back down to whatever he was eating before, right? He'll probably end up being right around 185, 190, somewhere in that range, which is extremely small for a quarterback. Extremely small. And he's going to do really, really well when he goes and he performs for Alabama's Pro Day. He's going to do great. He's going to run a very quick 40. He's going to do decent cone drills and shuttles, and he's going to look great on the field. And you're not going to see all that weight because he's going to have time to cut it all off. And that's what annoys me, because now everyone's going to go back and say, oh, but he weighed 204 and he's doing all this stuff. But when he does all these drills, he's going to be like 190. That's BS, in my opinion. That's annoying. That annoys me more than anything in this world.
Yeah, and I hear that, but I think he's going to be like, I feel he's a much better quarterback than Will Levis. I mean,
sure.
even
for sure.
Even though he doesn't have the physical traits that Levis does, he's far and beyond a better quarterback, and I would much rather have that on real life and Dynasty squad, like someone who's going to be on the field, someone who isn't going to throw a zillion interceptions or overthrow my wide receiver by 30 yards, so I would much, in my opinion, I'd much rather have him than Will Levis. I understand your points, and they're all very valid, but I mix. It's when I'm doing fantasy football, I like to mix the real life and the fantasy aspect in it. And with Bryce Young, like, he's still going to be able to move. He's still going to do those things.
He's not the most mobile, though. That's the only thing I was going
to. And I understand that, but still, like, he's going to do enough, and he's going to play enough to be able to produce decent stats for people.
Decent, though. That's the thing. Like, if Will Levis hits, though, that's the thing.
He does.
Like, we don't think he will, right? We don't think he will. But from an athletic standpoint, if Will Levis hits, he's going to outproduce Bryce Young. That's the only thing, right? Like, that's the only reason behind it, because Bryce Young has a massive disadvantage ahead of him. And again, people are willing to take him. If he was a little bit bigger, he would be my number one quarterback in this class. I think he's the best quarterback out of all of them, but I think it only works in college. That's the downside, right? He's an outlier of outliers for the quarterback position, and I just don't want to bet on that for fantasy. I think he could be okay, but I don't feel comfortable. I'd rather have the other guys with the upside versus Bryce Young. Like, let's say Bryce Young is, I don't know, worse Derek Carr, mediocre Derek Carr for the next 10 years. It's not bad for fantasy, but what's the upside? That's what I'm saying. Like, I don't think he's ever going to have a Patrick Mahomes, Tom Brady 50 touchdown season in it, like, ever. So what's the upside? Because he's not the most mobile guy. So What are we drafting him for above the other guys? At least Will Levis, if he hits athletically, he's going to carry your fantasy squad. I think that he's going to have a lot of problems in the actual NFL. That I think the interceptions are very concerning for the actual NFL. But for fantasy, if he hits, and he's going to be good. So, I don't know. Bryce Young is going to probably prove me wrong, but just like you're anti-Will Levis, I'm going to be anti-Bryce Young until the guy retires probably. So that's just how it's going to be. That's how it's going to be.
Hey, no, I understand that. I know I fully get that because there's guys that we love and there's guys that we can't stand. And
I know.
Those are two guys that we really can't stand.
The funny part is, like, I'm with you on Will Levis. I don't even like Will Levis that much, but I just think the physical tools are for fantasy just a lot of potential. Where I'd rather, because I think we both agree he's gonna be a top 10 pick. So
yeah.
With that draft capital, again, all he has to do is show something. Like Daniel Jones, all he had to do was show something. Now he's talked about as like a $40-45 million quarterback from there. So I think that Will Levis can do that much, but I will say I did rewatch some of Will Levis's tape too after our original one, and that's where I did see a little bit more promise with him. But again, I do think he makes a lot of dumb mistakes. You can fix that, but it is concerning for sure. So, no, I get your Will Levis dislike, but yeah. The outlier for Bryce Young is it's too risky for me for fantasy football because he's going to be a top 2 pick. That's the problem, right?
He will be.
That's the problem with Bryce Young. If you were getting him at 1.7, dude, I'm all over it. But you got to get him in the top 3. That's too much. Too much. All right, so the last guy we're going to talk. Well, the next guy. This guy was in a tier with Will Levis before for me. So we're actually going to talk about Stetson Bennett here. I know you don't like him as much. Here's the problem, though. We already talked about it, right? There's 5 guys, and then it falls off a cliff. I do think Stetson Bennett is probably the number 6 quarterback in this class, as gross as that kind of is.
That's
another
gross.
small guy, outlier of outliers, but he's older and he's small, which is not a great combination.
Not good.
But he's a winner. And he's fairly athletic. Like he does enough, right? And that's where I think he's going to get drafted to be someone's backup. And he's the one that you're always going to wonder, like, oh, what if he becomes a starter kind of thing, right? So Stetson Bennett, 3rd round pick in a super flex for me right now. Not the best. You look at the production score in college, he was decent, 4th ranked out of all of NFL's quarterbacks here. Combine athleticism score, the dash was not terrible, 4.67. He's a smaller guy, so it makes a little bit more sense. Quick, it's crazy though. Look at that 10-yard split, 1.59 for him. Anthony Richardson was 1.53. So just to put that in perspective, Anthony Richardson had 50 pounds on him and was still faster. So craziness. Vert was pretty average. Broad jump was pretty average there. So, and then a decent 20-yard shuttle, not a bad one at all. So he's a good athlete. He's a good, competent player. He has no real upside though. And again, I'm with you there. There's just not a lot to love about him. He's older as well. So that's why he's definitely in tier 3, a step down behind all 5 of those guys that we had above him. But any thoughts on Stetson Bennett?
I mean, with him going to the underwear Olympics here, and showing off his arm, like he does have a decent arm.
He does actually, pretty solid.
It is, but I don't think I understand he's a winner. That for some teams, like the old John Gruden teams, that means a lot. But anymore, like they want somebody who can play, and this guy's gonna be their backup. He's probably gonna be selling insurance in a few years after his NFL career's done.
Nah, XFL is still around, right?
That's true. That is very true. Like just ask AJ McCarron that.
Yep.
So that's who I equate him to. Like, I think he could play, but he's gonna be somebody's 3rd string quarterback. He's going to be on the practice squad. I think somebody has to get hurt for him to even see the field. even get close.
Yep, I'm with you
Like,
there. I'm with you.
because I mean, I honestly see him having a clipboard and a Surface Pro or whatever it's called
Yeah.
forever. So I
Right.
mean, for a few years, because I don't think he's going to last very long in it.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, it's not.
I I am not excited about him. I no.
Yeah, he's not
Like,
great, but it could definitely be worse. So, all right, the last guy we're going to talk about quickly here is going to be Tanner McKee. He's probably the number 6 or number 7 quarterback. He's definitely a tier. He's even a tier down from Stetson Bennett. He's really the last guy to even talk about that I think is interesting. The only reason why he's interesting is because he's 6'6" and 231 pounds, and
oh,
he's like prototypical quarterback size for some of these old school guys. Production score, athleticism score, not great. Middle of the pack there for all of it. He's going to be a backup, if at best, in the NFL. I really don't see Tanner McKee ever doing much more than that, but I do think he's going to get drafted maybe a little bit higher than he probably should, just because of the size. And Stanford, people might equate that to some good quarterbacks from the past, and that's the only thing there. But it's more telling to me that he's the number 7 guy, and there's really nobody else other than that I really even am interested in for fantasy. Like, there's a couple names out there, Max Dugan, some other guys there, but it's just nobody else was interesting whatsoever in this draft class. So definitely 5 guys that we really like for the top tiers. Stetson Bennett, we both agree that we don't love him, but he's worth taking a stab on later on in your drafts. And then Tanner McKee, fourth round rookie pick maybe for fantasy.
yeah.
But
Yeah, I think with McKee the problem is that he's not mobile at all.
yeah,
He's like a giant. He's a giant statue in the backfield.
he did have a pretty
Um,
decent 3-cone, surprisingly.
right.
So he's got some shiftiness to him, but his 40 was not great. So
He actually didn't run the 40 there.
oh, that's right. Yeah. I was thinking of
So
who was it? I was thinking of. I don't remember, but
it was somebody else. But I don't think I agree with you. He's going to be backup. I think he has a better chance because of his size to have that longevity compared to Bennett.
right.
Like,
Yep.
and and he can make all the throws. He can do all those things. Like I just don't think he can, well. I think he has good arm talent, but maybe not good ball placement.
Yeah, I'm with
That
you.
that's
There's a lot of
that's
flaws on his
Yeah,
tape.
so,
So
like, he's okay, but I think I'd rather have a couple other guys, I think the only reason I really like him is because of his size
sure.
and because he came from Stanford, and he's
Right.
and he's probably very cerebral, which
Yep.
is gonna help out. So, other than that, I kinda he's not in my top 4 tiers anymore. He fell off after I'm not impressed. I'm all good with Tanner McKee.
All right. So anybody else you wanted to talk on from the combine?
Um, I think the big one was Max Dugan. I mean, I don't have him in my top 4 tiers, but like I think him running a very good 40 time is going to help him quite a bit. Um, overall, I really like Max Dugan. I feel he's really gritty. I think he's a guy that's gonna that's gonna be on a team and kind of be like Gardner Minshew light. Kind of be like a good rah-rah guy, kind of be in there, kind of, like be in the trenches with the guys. But fantasy wise, again, I think somebody need he's gonna be a backup and
Right.
he's gonna have to run a lot.
Yep.
So
I'm with you.
um yeah, so I mean there are 2 other guys that I have in my tier 4 if you
Okay.
want me to
Sure.
go
Go
ahead and
ahead.
let you know that.
Go ahead.
I have Jaron Hall of BYU.
Okay.
Um, I think with him, like he is a little bit older. It's with being a redshirt senior, but I mean, I honestly think he did very well athletically. He didn't do anything at the combine, which is unfortunate for him. I kind of wish he would have done something,
Mm-hmm.
and that could have rose his draft stock. But I feel he will be drafted. I think I'm really excited to see what he's able to do. In his pro day, to see what kind of different things he does that makes him a little bit different compared to these quarterbacks that did do stuff at the combine.
Sure.
So, but I feel he has a decent running ability, which is going to help in fantasy.
Yep.
So I'm always all over that. And then the other guy was Clayton Tune of Houston.
Okay.
I feel he's rising on my boards. I feel overall that he had a pretty good pro day, or no, excuse me, not pro day, but combine.
Sure.
Like having a decent 40-yard dash. You know, like his 10-yard split was actually up there with Richardson. So,
Okay. Yep.
honestly, so I think his biggest thing, is coming from Houston. He's kind of a little clunky in the pocket,
Sure.
but I think all of that can be worked out in the NFL to be a decent backup.
All right. All right. So post combine, new rookie rankings that I have for my tiers. I'm gonna have tier 1, CJ Stroud, Anthony Richardson. Tier number 2, Hendon Hooker, Will Levis, Bryce Young. Tier number 3, Stetson Bennett. Tier number 4, Tanner McKee. Again, we're gonna update these post draft, and that'll be the final rankings. But what were your rankings and tiers here post combine?
All right, so in tier 1, I have CJ Stroud and Anthony Richardson. Tier 2, I got Bryce Young, Hendon Hooker. Tier 3, I have good old Will Levis by himself.
Okay.
Only because I know he's going to be a top 10 draft pick.
Sure.
Honestly.
Yep.
And then in tier 4, I have Jaron Hall, Clayton Tune, and I do have Stetson back.
All right. Fair enough.
But
he has the potential to be a decent backup. So
yeah, I think
who's the guy with I can see his face. Case Keenum. That's who he reminds me of. Case Keenum. He could be a Case Keenum.
Oh my gosh. Maybe.
All right. So that said, thank you guys for joining us for this episode. We're going to be back all week. Tomorrow for the running backs and wide receivers, we're actually going to have a guest on the podcast. Maybe we'll have him on for the tight ends. We'll see. Hopefully we'll be able to break those down. We'll see how it goes. We have not recorded the wide receiver or running back episodes just yet. Hopefully we're going to be able to get them all done in one episode, but there's a lot of guys. The wide receivers might take 2. There's a lot of changes. This wide receiver class got very sketchy very, very quickly. So
very fast, yes.
Make sure you come back the rest of the week. We're going to talk over these guys again. Hopefully we'll have a guest for it, but just stay tuned and you'll see all of our thoughts on these other skilled players, and that's where it's really going to matter for your rookie draft. So thank you guys again for listening. Find us over on Twitter at TDC_Calvin, at Dynasty_Dale. Hit us up with any questions you might have. Like, comment, subscribe, do your work down in the comment section below. Help us out with the algorithm. Tell a friend about the podcast. That's all we could ask for you guys. Until next time, thank you guys for listening. Have a good night.